Hey everybody, welcome to the PixelBlips podcast for April 6th. Almost fucked that up. 2014. Man, we need to watch our language. This is on YouTube.
Whatever. It's on YouTube.
And hey, alert. So we're going to be talking about Metal Gear Solid today. Specifically, how we feel about the series, how we feel about Ground Zeroes. We talked about it a little bit last week. We got into it, wasted a little bit of time, which is why last week's episode ran long. We're going to talk about it in full this week. I'm a really big Metal Gear Solid fan. I've always been a really big Metal Gear Solid fan. I really like those games.
Well, I mean, they're really good games, right? Like, we've talked about Metal Gear Solid for the PS1 before as, you know, one of those...
Top 10 games for the PS1.
One of those top 10 games for, in general, like, ever. Like, it is the series that started to show us, hey, these games are not just playthings for little kids. They're not just...
They're movies.
It's like, it is a movie that you can interact with. You may not be able to shape the story a whole hell of a lot, but there are, like, really nice cutscenes. There's really good dialogue. The voice acting is great.
Good.
Well, for the PS1 era...
There's a lot of like things that I think we can talk about later when we get to Ground Zero, specifically how Ground Zeroes ends. But like the Metal Gear Solid series, for me, really encapsulates what I would call post-Mario video gaming. Where before Metal Gear Solid, everything was platformers and cutesy and Sonic the Hedgehog and Zelda and not dark, like they were games.
Mm-hmm.
Post Metal Gear Solid, you got into a game as an experience.
Yeah, I can see that.
So like without Metal Gear Solid, you would never have Call of Duty. All the games would still look like Doom. There wouldn't be a huge emphasis on story. Like you would have clearly delineated lines between like, this is an RPG, it has a story, it has backstory. This is an adventure game, it has a story, it has backstory. However, this is a first-person shooter, it has a page of text. This is a platformer, it has a page of text. You know, you wouldn't get... Cutscenes before Metal Gear Solid were so different from the gameplay that it was jarring. You know.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking
that like the game would stop,
like a Sega CD game,
cutscene.
And it would load up like an anime cutscene, and then it would go back to the game itself.
Or even like Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
Like it stopped and dialogue happened and then went on.
Yeah, but I mean,
Metal Gear Solid, the times when it had to stop for dialogue to happen, it pulled you into this codec conversation.
Well, it would do that, or it would be like
or you were like
almost like a movie scene, but it was done in engine, and you would you know,
or like it would be like the fight with Revolver Ocelot, where he's talking to you while
you're shooting at him,
and like laughing, like And before that, we didn't really like plot bits wouldn't be handed out that way. Plot bits would like Bowser would cackle at you, or Dr. Robotnik would cackle at you, but it wasn't like, you know, I'm going to kill you, you can't handle a weapon, you don't know how to bounce shots, this single action army revolver is the best thing ever made, like. And at the same time, Metal Gear Solid, like, tackled something that was relevant at the time, and is still relevant, nuclear proliferation.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the 90s, we were really talking about, like, the Star Treaty, and, like, everyone has to kind of step back from this thing, we have to kind of start dismantling these weapons.
Yeah, we probably
because we kind of built up way too many, like how the post-Cold War world was shaping up.
Yeah, and you know,
and then Metal Gear Solid 2 dealt with terrorism and how that's the new thing. Oddly enough, only a few months after September 11th, which clearly wasn't planned, you know, because this game takes a while to make.
Kojima did not plan that.
Yeah. So, you know, as we get into the War on Terror, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, we kind of learned that, like, oh, all this terrorism stuff is just the Cold War and, like, our sins of the past coming back to bite us.
Yep.
Snake Eater deals very heavily with that. Mm-hmm. You know, Boss, the main villain.
Big Boss.
The Boss.
Oh, the Boss.
The Boss, the main villain of that game, you know, is scarred by what happened in World War II and the Korean conflict, and that is why, you know, she decides to go against the United States. General Volgin is a single profiteer built out of the Soviet system that is profiting off of what World War II happened, much like Osama bin Laden was funded by Ronald Reagan, you know, the Iran-Contra affair, you know, stuff like that. And as Portable Ops and Peace Walker, which came after Metal Gear Solid 3, Peace Walker, I just found this out. Peace Walker was originally supposed to be called Metal Gear Solid 5, but Konami wouldn't let him do that.
Why?
Because it was going to be on the PSP, and the PSP wasn't as big as the PlayStation 3.
It's not a home
the Xbox
console
360,
type stuff, yeah.
So they made him name it Peace Walker. But it was really going to be Metal Gear Solid 5, Peace Walker.
But now we've got Phantom Pain.
Phantom Pain, 5. Anyway, so Peace Walker and Portable Ops deal with Iran-Contra affair, and the stuff that we did with Noriega, all that stuff, and the CIA counterintelligence of the drug war trade and all this other stuff. At the same time, while building out the Metal Gear Solid mythos of
Super Soldier Snake.
Well,
and Big Boss.
The philosophers, the Patriots, Ocelot, Eva, Big Boss, eventually Liquid and Solid Snake, Les Enfants Terribles.
Okay.
And by the time Metal Gear Solid 4 came around, we're in this post-9/11 world, this post-war on terror world where everything is super connected, and Metal Gear Solid 4 deals with, okay, what's the end point of this? Private military corporations like Blackwater and everything's connected and control, and Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain and Ground Zeroes are supposedly dealing both with the super surveillance state that we have now as viewed from the lens of the Cold War Afghanistan in the late 80s.
Yeah, I was going to say, it takes place in like the...
late 80s.
The 80s somewhere.
So basically, if you're following the timeline
of Big Brick Cell Phone Snake?
Yeah, if you're following the timeline of Metal Gear 1 for the Nintendo and MSX technically, air quotey, takes place in 1995. So Phantom Pain is going to take place 6 years before that.
Yeah.
Ish. Which is weird to watch all this stuff on a timeline because it's always been set in like near future. And now that we're like, that's no longer near future, it's interesting to see how these things like actually came to pass.
Yeah.
Which is one thing I've always really loved about the Metal Gear Solid series. The other thing I really love about the Metal Gear Solid series is that sometimes it's unabashedly Japanese.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there are jokes about peeing, there are jokes about diarrhea. You can stare at your female cohorts until they blush and start saying things about you staring at them. Like...
Well, it's Kojima, man.
And that's just how his games are.
Yeah, well...
You hide in a box that dogs can pee on, and if you use that box after the dogs peed on it, they don't bark at you anymore.
Well, that's just good spying.
Kojima.
That's good spying right there.
And that was back in Metal Gear Solid, and that kind of goes to show you like the depth of realism, air quoting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can't.
Like trying things and seeing if it works out and like how he thinks and builds these things. But it also kind of, every time you die, people yell snake, snake, snake.
Yeah.
And like those humorous bits don't mesh well with the serious bits because the things he's dealing with are very serious topics.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at real life parallels and like his interpretation. If it happened in this universe, this guy or this guy's like
clone son
would be taking care of it.
That's technically who he is.
Yeah, he's a clone. He's not really his dad, but he kind of is. He's just a clone.
I mean, the odds of Big Boss and Eva hooking up and having a baby and having it be a boy in normal sense are good enough that, yes, Solid Snake is Big Boss's son.
Yeah.
Which is weird. There's a lot of minutia in the Metal Gear Solid universe where Metal Gear Solid 4 they build as the end of the saga. So, like, I think Kojima didn't want it to be the end of the saga, and he was like, wait! I don't want to tie all these loose ends up. And they were like, you have to. And that is why sizable portions of Metal Gear Solid 4 are PowerPoint presentations.
And big cutscenes and things like that.
But the Metal Gear Solid, if there's one through point through the entire Metal Gear Solid series, it is the corrupting influence of power.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's power. Power corrupts absolute. Power corrupts absolutely.
And in the Metal Gear Solid universe, you're dealing with people who do have... Because in the
more
real
or less
world,
absolute power, yeah.
No, in the real world, you don't really have absolute power. Even if you're the president of the United States or the president of Russia or the head of the UN, you don't really have absolute power. In the Metal Gear Solid universe, they're dealing with people that have absolute power in a realistic way.
Yeah.
Because of the philosopher's legacy, Basically, short version, all the gold that the Nazis stole during World War II, certain people on the American side, certain people on the German side, on the Russian side, basically put it into funds during the war to make money, and all that money got built up in a huge stockpile called the Philosopher's Legacy. That thing, bunch of money, causes all of society's ills going forward.
Okay.
Yes. Like, the degree to which the Philosopher's Legacy F's stuff up in the world is amazing.
In the
and it's realistic too.
Yeah.
Basically, how they go about, like, how we go from people hoarding gold in World War II to a super surveillance state where private military corporations are stronger than national militaries and fight proxy wars for one another so they can gain money is an amazingly straight line. Like, once someone sits down and explains to you, like, from A to E, this is how it happened. Which is one thing I always hate when people go like, oh, I don't want to play the Metal Gear Solid games. They're so confusing and they're so, like, backroad legacy. Like, no, like, if you've actually played the games, it's surprisingly simple.
Yeah, I mean, the games themselves, like, I'm not super deep into the story of all the stuff. Like, I understand, like, I know who most of the characters are, especially the ones in, like, 1 and 2, because those are the ones I played the most of. And
Raiden.
Huh?
Raiden.
Fuck Raiden.
I
Fuck
like
that
Raiden.
guy.
Well, Raiden turns out to be a really cool guy if you totally ignore what happens in Metal Gear Solid. Wait, Metal Gear... Is it still... No, it's Metal Gear Revengeance. Because it's not Solid. It doesn't have to do with
it
Solid
doesn't have
Snake.
to do with Snake at all.
Or Big Boss.
Or Big Boss. So, you know, I know a decent amount of the characters, right? And then, like, they have their own iterations. Like, there is, like, a vampire guy in a couple of them, right?
Vamp.
Yeah, but he's not in all of them. He's in, like...
No, he's in 2 and 4.
Yeah.
And he might be in Revengeance. I haven't played all the way through Revengeance yet.
Yeah, well... I mean,
it's different enough. You can tell, like, it's
a weird action...
It's its own thing.
Yeah, it's like this crazy, over-the-top action game. A lot like...
Bayonetta.
There's that... Yeah, I was going to say, like, that Sega game that came out last year.
Oh, Vanquish.
Yeah, it was a lot like that, except without a lot of guns.
It is exactly like Vanquish, because it was made by Platinum Games.
Yeah.
And they make a type of game, and they make it very well.
Yes.
Kojima Productions makes a type of game, and they make it very well.
They do. So, you know, I mean, the games aren't hard, right? Like, they are, at least for the most part, they are like third-person
There's a good trial,
games.
like, there's a good trial and error. You always get further. There's a difficulty curve so that it's always interesting. But the thing that drives a Metal Gear Solid game is the story, which is why Metal Gear Online never lasts very long after the production of a game.
No.
We always do a Metal Gear Online. It always lasts for about a year, and then they turn the servers off.
Yeah, well, that's because who wants to... I mean, at some point, somebody's going to wind up figuring out the online...
It's basically SOCOM.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah.
So, it gets really confusing and weird. And it's because we haven't been able to look at the timeline from a above perspective.
Yeah, where it's like...
Until now.
Yeah.
Because basically it was... You had Metal Gear and Metal Gear... not Solid Snake. Snake's Revenge? Metal Gear 2.
Yeah.
Anyway, Snake's Revenge was made by a U.S. team, and it's really... One of them was made by a U.S. team.
And
it's
it's
really
not very
shitty.
good.
And the one that was made by the Japanese team, the MSX one, is actually good. So anyway, Metal Gear 2, we'll just call it Metal Gear 2. 1995, I think 1997. And then we had Metal Gear Solid, which was 2005, supposedly. And Metal Gear Solid for the Game Boy Color, which I think was also supposed to be 2005, but it's a clone. You don't need to pay attention to that one. And then we had Metal Gear Acid 2, once again.
Weren't those card games?
They were card games, tactical card games. Once again, clone. You don't need to worry about that. Then we had Metal Gear Solid 2 in 2007? 2007 in the timeline? I'm trying to think. Don't quote me on any of this stuff. It's very confusing.
I mean, I know the
out.
general order in which the games are supposed to, like, as far as timeline.
I'm just saying, and then we had Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, which happens all the way back here at the beginning of the timeline. And then we had Metal Gear Solid 4, which happens
at the end,
the furthest end of the timeline now. And we're missing this huge chunk here in the middle, which basically deals with
the 60s and the 70s.
Between 1969 and 1995, and not knowing what went on there. And now that we're slowly piecing those things together through things like Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, and Metal Gear Solid The Phantom Pain / Ground Zeroes, we're getting the whole picture of how this all happened.
Or at least a better picture of it. Because, I mean, they're not going to talk about, like, every year, but at some point Snake takes it, or Boss takes a year off, right?
Things make sense.
Yeah.
Now that you can look at it.
You can fill in the gaps. You can see all the events that led up to.
But the point is, you weren't shown those in order, so it's hard to piece things together.
Well, I mean, it's like Pulp Fiction, right?
Yeah.
I've seen there's two cuts of Pulp Fiction, right? There's the one that is in order that is not as good.
Yep.
And then there's the one
that's not in order that's really excellent.
That is fantastic. So, but you see the whole story, right?
Yeah. It's like piecing things together in the Marvel Universe. You don't see the entire story until you get to, like, the Avengers. And then, everything starts to make sense. All those other things I saw piecing together make sense.
You see little bits and pieces, right? Like, you'll see, like, just to use the Avengers as a parallel, like the Marvel movies, you'll see Coulson here and there. Yeah. And you'll see, Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. logo and things like that all tied together. But then once Avengers shows up, boom, everybody's here.
You know what S.H.I.E.L.D. is.
Mm-hmm. And you'll know why Tony Stark's at the end of the Hulk movie.
Yeah. You understand, like, in Metal Gear Solid, after you've played... I'm trying to think of where you would really understand.
I mean, they're good games on their own.
After you've played Portable Ops, I would say if for bare minimum, after you've played Portable Ops, you understand who the Patriots are and why the president, that is the president during Metal Gear Solid, who becomes the villain in Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. You understand what he's doing and why he has to do it and who he is. Once Peace Walker comes in, you understand even more. And then I hope by the time you're done with Phantom Pain, it's like, okay, we get a full picture
going
on. Of how the philosophers went from running World War II to the Patriots running the modern age. And how they can, like, literally have absolute power and control everything, and why the final Metal Gear Solid 4 has to be old Snake, fighting Ocelot on top of an aircraft carrier, which is awesome.
And then a 90-minute cutscene.
Yes, and credits. That you can't skip. You really want to, because you'll find out how good you were at the game after you're done with the credits.
But that's your payment.
It's your payment. So anyway, like, that's why I like Kojima releasing things like the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection on the PlayStation 3, which has Metal Gear Solid, VR missions, Metal Gear 2, Metal Gear Solid 2, The Sons of Liberty, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, and Guns of the Patriots, and Peace Walker. So you can get, like...
all in, like, this, $30 package or $40 package?
Yeah. The stuff you learn in Portable Ops, it kind of fills in the gaps of how Military Sans Frontiers forms and what their purpose is and what they do. But, Peace Walker's where it all starts to make sense. So, if you were like, Andy, I really want to understand these games. I don't want to read a walkthrough. What is the bare minimum ones I have to play? I would say 1, 2, 3, Peace Walker, and then 4. You do have to play Peace Walker. Because it explains a lot about
You're talking about Solid, right? Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
So Solid 1, Solid 2, Solid 3, Peace Walker 4.
Yeah, the stuff that happens in Metal Gear 1, Metal Gear 2.
That's a lot of game time.
Yes.
That is a shitload of game time.
Yeah. But it's only really, the stuff that happens in Metal Gear 1, Metal Gear 2 is relevant going forward from where we are at now with Metal Gear Solid 5. Because it deals with the battle that erupts between Big Boss and Snake, Solid Snake. As opposed to which that battle is resolved at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots.
Okay. Yeah, I was just...
If you actually literally want to know what's going on in the Metal Gear Solid universe, you only want to play one game, Metal Gear Solid Guns of the Patriots. For about half of the game, you'll have no clue what's going on. The latter half of the game, you'll have to watch a lot of cutscenes, but you will finally understand what the Metal Gear Solid universe was doing.
Yeah.
The problem with that is we're dealing with very serious issues.
Yes.
But we're also sandbagged by exclamation points and crawling and dogs peeing on boxes. So when we do very serious things like child torture, we have to deal with them very carefully.
Yeah.
Ground Zeroes does not do that because it is a smaller snippet
It's like
of a much larger narrative.
I think as we were talking before the show, like the Ground Zeroes, that's right? Because Phantom Pain is the actual game. Ground Zeroes is like the tech demo, whatever. It's like the tanker level on 2, where it is only like you could finish the tanker level in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, 20. I think I could probably speedrun it in 5.
Yeah, but I mean, like bare minimum, it's like 10 minutes maybe if you watch the cutscenes and shit.
Yeah, but it's sizable. You can do a lot in the tanker.
Yeah, you could spend 2 hours on the tanker, just effing around doing all the crap, or you could beat it in 5 minutes, and that's how Ground Zeroes is. Like you can play that in 10 or 15 minutes and be done with it, or you can spend 2 or 3 hours doing all the other.
I don't
crap.
really want to talk about whether or not it's worth
$30,
$30 retail.
I don't know what it is.
I think it's $30 retail or not. What I want to talk about is the narrative. Like, if at the end of the tanker level, if what happened in Ground Zeroes, here we go, spoilers. Dance. Anyway, spoilers. So if you want to, don't listen to this. There's a character named Paz, who is a young girl. She shows up in Peace Walker. She's not really that good, but Big Boss takes care of her because she's a torture victim survivor.
Yep.
In Ground Zeroes, you find out the guy that kidnapped her, Ground Zeroes is about rescuing her. The guy that kidnapped her tortures her, forces her friend to rape her, and then puts a bomb inside of her. The only way you could put something inside of a girl.
Without cutting them open.
And I will say that. At the end of Ground Zeroes, that bomb goes off in a very gory fashion. Done. Okay. The problem is... You don't spoilers over. The thing that happens at the end of Ground Zeroes happens out of the narrative. It would be like if you only watched the scene from Pulp Fiction with Zed's dead baby. You wouldn't know what Zed did, who Zed was, why Zed was going to die. Only getting that snippet, if that little snippet had happened at the end of the tanker, we would be having this discussion back then and not now. Mm-hmm. The problem is pulling that out of the narrative, since it is so shocking, even though, yes, Metal Gear deals with torture in every game. It deals with child soldiers. It deals with child torture. It deals with the sex trade. It deals with a lot.
Yeah.
What? It deals with them inside of a grander narrative of the full game that you are playing and an even bigger narrative of the Metal Gear Solid universe, who these people are, why they're evil, what they're doing.
And because this game is so short...
Yes.
And that's why people are making such a big deal out of it. Like, that's how this ends. I paid $30 for this, and it ends here. And it wasn't going to be like a 40-hour experience and a 40-hour experience. No.
And I am totally with them on that. The note that it ends on is offensive in the way it ends on it. Because, one, if you haven't played Peace Walker, you have no clue who Paz is. For most of the game, you really don't know what Paz looks like. You know she's a little girl. Okay?
How many little girls can be in this base?
No. Like, what her friend Chico and her go through is horrid. None of the consequences of that horridness are dealt with. What's dealt with is, it's horrid, we're setting this up for a bigger narrative later, and she dies in a...
Pretty terrible way.
Pretty terrible way. This thing happens at the end of Ground Zeroes. And you'll be able to figure out and do stuff later. The thing that happens at the end of Ground Zeroes propels the narrative of Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. In the same way that the thing that happens at the end of the tanker mission propels the narrative of Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty, and the thing that happens at the end of the Research Sokolov mission, the Virtuous mission in Metal Gear Solid 3: Snake Eater, propels what happens in Snake Eater. However, divorcing those things from the narrative didn't matter as much because they didn't deal with something so horrid. When it deals with something so horrid, you kind of have to put it in a bigger context. Or people are going to go,
what the hell?
What?
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. But, I mean, I'm trying to think of how the tanker ends. I remember there's the gunfight with Olga, and then she flies away on the helicopter, right?
That's way before the tanker ends. That's like midway through the tanker.
Oh, it's been a while since I played that game then.
The thing that happens at the end of the tanker is you find out that the Navy SEALs are building a Metal Gear Ray.
Oh, that's right.
And Ocelot takes over the tanker, scuttles it, and steals Metal Gear Ray.
Okay.
And you also find out that Liquid Snake's hand is now on Revolver Ocelot, and he's
Somehow taking over his mind.
Fighting for control of his mind, which if you've played Metal Gear Solid 4, you know what they're actually doing. But yes, so the backlash towards Kojima is warranted. The backlash about how Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes ends is warranted. However, I would say temper it with this is going to be part of a larger narrative later.
Yeah. And you know, they're just...
That will probably still have guys that have compulsive diarrhea, people that vomit, and dogs peeing on boxes.
Probably.
Because it's Kojima.
Those are staples in Metal Gear.
Yes, and it's weird when you're playing something like Ground Zeroes and those staples are there in a small plate meal, and this scene happens at the end of it that is very serious, where there's not a lot of story in Ground Zeroes. I'm happy with how the story in Ground Zeroes is presented. You don't have to jump out into a codec anymore, but how it ends, I'm just...
Well, like you said, it's...
And the criticism about it being a retail product and...
being that high a priced is kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's a thing too, and I don't think Konami should have done it. But
well, if Konami had another game, like you said earlier, if they had another game coming out,
they would probably have
They probably would have been like, here's a download code for this.
Yeah, just like to help prop up that other game's sales, like they did with Zone of Enders.
Yep.
Zone of Enders, also a Kojima series, also deals with really serious stuff, but also has really
silly stuff
in it.
Yep.
Like dick jokes.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know.
You know, if you want to do dick jokes and you want to do, torture and child soldiers, you kind of can't do them right next to each other.
No.
You have to put a little bit of space.
And there's not a lot of space in this.
There are a lot of now I think about it, there's a lot of crotch grabbing in the Metal Gear Solid universe. Pat, 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 pat. So, yes.
Package checks.
Package checks. So if you're in a place to package checks, you have to put a little bit more context for child torture.
A little bit. Yes. Yeah.
But like, I really see where I want to see the bigger I'm not going to play Ground Zeroes yet because I watched a walkthrough. I know how it goes. I got the story. I got my taste of it. It's expensive and I don't really want to buy it.
It's not for $30.
And I know that when the Phantom Pain comes out in a year or two or whenever, it's going to be part of that. And I want to experience that
as
in
one
part
big
of the
story,
bigger narrative.
Instead of like this little offshoot and then 8 months later.
Because I think we can all agree with these expanded universe things, when you see all the things that connect everything, it's more enjoyable.
You see the little... Your little red wires on the wall with the paper and the crazy...
like when
crazy
people
conspiracy
come to me and
theory
they're like,
wall.
I don't want to play Metal Gear Solid because it's this crazy conspiracy and I don't know the history and all this stuff. It's like, you're right. The game's really good in its own self, but that crazy story history thing really makes the game excellent.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when Phantom Pain comes out, it'll probably be getting Game of the Year awards. Just like when Guns of the Patriots came out, it got Game of the Year awards. When Snake Eater came out, it got Game of the Year awards. When Sons of Liberty came out, it got Game of the Year awards.
So what you're saying is, if it had come out last year on the PS3 and the 360, you don't think that like a game like Last of Us would have gotten all those awards?
No. I think it would have... I don't know what the Phantom Pain is yet, but I'm sure it would have taken away awards from Last of Us. Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I still look at Metal Gear Solid as a series. I look at it as a more... like a focused series. I'm like, these are the guys that are going to buy this game. You're one of those guys that's going to buy that game, right? It's not that I don't want to play a Metal Gear Solid game, but you're right. There's like that barrier of, I don't know what the fuck is going on because this universe is ridiculously complicated.
Yeah, each of the Metal Gear Solid games has sold over 5 million units.
I understand that.
So like, The Last of Us, here's a good example. Call of Duty Ghosts.
Sales numbers don't make a great game.
It's true. Call of Duty Ghosts doesn't rate a theatrical trailer playing before actual movies.
No.
Metal Gear Solid Guns of the Patriots did.
Yeah, I know.
So, like...
they spent a lot of money on marketing for that game.
I know. And it paid off. 2, it was a good game. 3, like... Kojima, there's a bar that Kojima says, we have to meet this bar.
I understand.
Or we're not releasing it.
Exceedingly high standards for his products.
Yes. Revengeance didn't meet that bar. They weren't going to release it until Konami sold it off to Platinum Games. So the bar's up here. Most other game developers, including people like Shigeru Miyamoto and
I get it.
Yuji Naka, their bar is not up here. Their bar's lower. There's a reason he understands, like, these have to be really good and important.
I understand what you're
They
saying.
have to be
he knows
generation defining.
He knows the people that will buy his game, and he knows what they want, and he puts all that crap in there.
Yeah,
and there are a lot of
which is why there
people.
are dogs peeing on boxes, why there's guys puking, why there's
I get that.
torture and stuff. I think that base unit, a lot like a Final Fantasy game, they know there's people that will just buy it because it says Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
That base audience allows them the budget at their publisher to do a lot more than other games can do, and do it better than other games can do.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, whatever. It's not that big a deal. I was gonna say, like,
you don't think a Metal Gear Solid game could be as good as The Last of Us?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying it would. I mean, there were probably 5 other games that would have gotten more attention that came out last year than Metal Gear Solid 5 had it come out last year. It comes out this year on the next gen systems, and it probably will do fantastic.
I don't think it's coming out this year. I think if it's coming out this year, they wouldn't have done Ground Zeroes.
I think it's coming out. I think it'll be out before the end of the year.
I think if that's true, Konami really likes getting money because.
Well, yeah, they're a business.
I think they put out Ground Zeroes to help fund the finishing of.
It's a Kickstarter.
Pain. Yeah.
This is how Konami does Kickstarters.
I'm pretty sure that's how it's going. Knowing how many times Metal Gear Solids get delayed.
Well, I mean, I thought there was a release date for it, but
so you're saying that had the Phantom Pain come out
last year, it has that barrier to entry.
There's no way.
I'm not saying it has no way it would have gotten like Game of the Year awards. I'm saying it has the barrier to entry that most people don't know what's going on because they haven't played all the other games, right? Like the PSP games, the PS2 games, whatever.
Yeah.
Like if you're talking to somebody who only owns a PS3, the only Metal Gear game that they would have bought for their PS3. Unless they bought a collection, which they probably would not have.
Just saying. There's a reason they released the Legacy Collection last summer.
Yeah.
Because they said, hey, we can finally release all of these games on one disc.
Yeah.
Or one thing.
And, it's possible they bought that and played through all of them because they liked 4.
Yeah.
I think that The Last of Us would have a lower barrier to entry. It could have been any game, right? Like it is a new IP. You don't need to know anything about the universe going in. And you don't really need to know anything about the universe going into Metal Gear unless you just
every Metal Gear game can be played by itself.
Yeah, I mean they're all standalone
that's the
stories
of them.
It helps. You're like, oh, this guy was here, or I think they make reference to shit that you may.
If you're gonna play Ground Zeroes, it would help if you had played the Phantom Pain just to figure out who people are, since Ground Zeroes has so little story.
Yeah.
But so you're saying that a new IP would probably get more.
A new IP that was done just as well as it would have done, and I think.
But my point is, there are very few games that are done just as well as a Metal Gear Solid game. I would say Uncharted 3 is the only game Naughty Dog has ever done that is done just as well as a Metal Gear Solid game.
I would buy that because Uncharted is a great series in general.
Yeah, and by Uncharted 3, Naughty Dog had their feet under them. They understood what everyone wanted. They understood what the game was. They understood the characters.
Yes.
They understood where to go. They had a grasp of it. They were good to go. They had a grasp of the system, their program form, they're good to go. However, a Metal Gear game, once again, he has that bar. And that bar is a 9.9 out of 10.
Yeah.
Metal Gear games very rarely rate lowly.
Well, I'm not saying it's going to be it's not going to sell Barbie Horse Adventure or whatever. It's not going to be like that kind of a game. It's not going to sell that
he doesn't look at it from sales figures.
He's he looks at it as a story.
This is my legacy that I want to leave. I want people to play these games in perpetuity after I die. They have to be this good for them to do that.
Yes, they do. And they will be that good. I don't think they will garner the what is it?
The praise?
The praise, yes, I can't think of the word.
I didn't say they would take away all of the awards from The Last of Us. I said they would take away some.
I'm not. Yeah,
The Last of Us
it would definitely I could see it winning best stealth action game or something like that. Best.
No, I'm talking about Game of the Year awards from different publishers.
Well, there's only one publisher that they care about, and that's Konami.
No.
Anyway,
Critics Game of the Year awards.
Yeah.
Publishers, as in magazine publishers and websites. Yeah, I'm saying that Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, had it came out last year, had it been done, was as solid as Metal Gear Solid games normally are, it would have taken away a sizable portion of the Game of the Year awards that Last of Us got. It would have been major competition for
It would have been major competition.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. Because I don't think it would have, but I don't really. I like the Metal Gear games from like a.
But
they're
like,
really they're a really cool thing.
Look at the other competition that
I mean,
Last of Us had.
Yeah, it really wasn't a whole lot going on.
Yeah, it was a sizable. It was the end of a generation, so there wasn't a lot of competition. That's one, and your next in line is like BioShock Infinite, which is an excellent game.
Yeah,
but a Metal Gear game would be better than that.
Probably, yeah.
So unless he does crazy stupid shit,
which he might.
Kojima does that occasionally. We went way over again.
Yep.
So don't forget to spay and neuter your Pokemon, and we'll see you next week.